Okay.
So just for 1 or 2 minutes, that's all.
Okay, no problem. We can do it.
So, on behalf of Applied Mechanics Department, LD College of Engineering, we warmly welcome to Professor Dr. Kala Venkata Uday, who is from IIT Mandi. Before going through his brief CV, I would like to tell here to the particularly participants that Dr. Uday sir has worked a lot on this landslide monitoring. That is the topic on which he is going to share his expertise. So let me just go through his brief CV. Sir is presently working as an assistant professor at IIT Mandi and has completed his PhD from IIT Bombay. He has more than 12 plus years of research and academic experience with 2 years in industry and 7 years in research and academics. He is one of the pioneer faculty of civil engineering at IIT Mandi. His research areas include landslide disaster risk reduction, nature-based mitigation solutions, biogeotechnics, and machine learning in geotechnics. He is author of more than 10 plus research articles. In his name, he has one granted and filed patents and have received a research grant worth of rupees more than 2.5 crores. He is also the founding director and the part-time CEO of startup that is Intuit Services Limited, that is incubated by IIT Mandi Catalyst. So, sir, once again, on behalf of Academics Department, I warmly welcome you to this STDP and please share your expert sessions. So, over to you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Manish. It has been kind that you have been in touch for getting me into this particular presentation. So I thank you again for giving me this opportunity, and I good afternoon to all the participants. And with the brief introduction given by Dr. Manish, I think I will try to stand on whatever profile he has read regarding me. So yes, as he told, I am Dr. KB Uday. I am going to talk a little about machine learning for landslide disaster risk reduction. So as you can understand, probably this is slightly away from the other topics which you might be looking in. However, you can consider that a major part of the instrumentation and the approach which we have developed as a part of this particular work will be useful probably for some of you or at least all of you in different aspects. So don't simply take it either for landslides or don't think that this particular approach is only limited to this particular study or this particular work which we have done at IIT Mandi. It can be actually be spread across based on your expertise, based on your point. So I'll try to focus more on approach than on exactly applications, objectives, and conclusions from this particular study. But however, I'll be talking a little about case studies related to landslide disaster, and I'm sure if most of the participants are from the hilly areas, or if you have ever visited some hilly areas, I'm sure you are going to have an idea about what is landslide and how the disaster claims major life and how this particular disaster can be brought in by giving a little idea about qualitative risk analysis. That also I'll try to slightly briefly cover as a part of this particular presentation, because I just wanted to give you an idea how you can do a good risk analysis in order to understand what is the aspect which you need to take out for disaster risk reduction. So up to here, mostly it's like disaster management, which disaster risk management maybe for most of you in the presentation. So in the meantime, can somebody just confirm if I am able to, I'm audible, clear, and my
Clearly,
slides
clearly
are visible?
Audible, sir. Clearly
and also
audible.
my
Slides
sketch,
are also
my pen
clearly
is also
audible.
working.
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. So again, getting back, and then based on the disaster risk reduction, how can we approach towards one particular line of landslide disaster risk reduction? And then of course, because we are talking about machine learning always includes most important component, that is the data collection, followed by some applications of machine learning, and lastly into some predictive analysis, how all this particular analysis can be used towards again landslide disaster risk reduction. So this will be my focus of presentation. So I want all the participants to be a bit of on the active side so that we can interact if at all possible as a part of this particular. Actually, one more thing is this team viewer gives us a very good opportunity to interact actually compared to many other online interfaces. So I want participants also, if you want anything to explore, or if you have anything to discuss or anything to simply ask, I think it can be done right away. I'm happy if somebody can respond on this. And secondly, there is a chat box, so just try to type on the question right off at that particular point of time. I'm sure all the slides have a slide number, so it will be easy for us to also accommodate your questions if at all it is required just at that particular point of time. Okay, so with this I'll start. So as you can understand, here we are going to talk a little more about on the line of machine learning, landslides, and risk reduction, disaster risk reduction methodology, or risk related to risk. So I just want to give you a small idea about the view of IIT Mandi, which is present in the mid Himalayan region. And I think this is the only IIT currently out of the 24 we have now, which is in or in between hills. So you can see we have two campuses, one which is South Campus and the other is North Campus, and we have to daily travel by this particular path in order to reach the North Campus, and it's all towards hills. We also have snow peaks right near to the campus, and also we have a perennial river, Uhul, which is flowing just across the campus, or just across the campus. We have rivers also flowing in. So when we look into a general perspective, you look this. But however, when you are looking into when you zoom in, or when you decrease the scale of your image, and when you come into the road which takes you from the district of Mandi or towards the town of Mandi to IIT Mandi, you're going to travel around 15 kilometers, and this 15 kilometers is going to take you more than 45 minutes without, of course, traffic. However, this is all because of the hilly terrain. And when you are talking about hilly terrain, and when you are coming in on this particular road, then you can see very good amount of landslides which are almost like 82 as per our recent Sensex. 14 kilometers, 82 landslides. So you can see what is the sparsity or what is the density of the landslides you will come across while you are traveling from the town center to IIT Mandi. Now, if I talk about Mandi as a district or Himachal Pradesh as a state, and followed by, if I talk about Himalayan region, if I add Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, and a little of Nilgiris into all these particular aspects, then I'm sure these numbers are going to fall into these numbers are huge numbers. So now, as a combination, again, you can see probably we have soil, which we have rock which has been falling, or which we have rock type of failures. Then we have soil type of failures. Then we have a mixed failure, that is a rock and soil mixed. Debris, we normally try to call it in technical lines. And now another type of slides which I want to show you is these two types of slides, where if you see the thickness or the depth of this particular slide is hardly half meter to 1 meter in both the slides, as you can see. Okay, but however, you can see the area which is slided, or the amount of soil which has come out, is actually huge. So if you really look into the definition of landslides, or definition into such type of failures in the soil, then these two failures especially, they come into not exactly of landslides, but these are mostly termed as erosion type of failures. Okay, now what is the point of understanding all this is our approach or our necessity should be totally different on different types of this particular material, or different types of flows, or different types of slides. So looking into again, what is the requirement of understanding all this, because when we talk about landslides, then it's typically defined as a earth material which is moving down the slope, outside the slope, or moving out of the slope, and landslide is one of the disaster, and when you look into the disaster aspect of this, then it claims life, and it also involves and includes huge amount of money which is spent only for managing the landslides, not exactly mitigating. As per the Sensex which we got from NIDM from 2016, there should be a new report coming out very soon. So let us see if we have dealt landslides better in the last 5 years or something like this. So when we look into the landslide classification, as just now we were discussing, typically we need to look at different types of material which is flowing out. It can be rock, as I showed you, debris, a combination of coarse grained soils, and sometimes in few of the countries worldwide, we look into also some fine grained soils or clay type of soils which normally tend to slide or tend to come out of the soil mass. So depending on the material, there are different movements which are fixed up. Like normally the rock tends to have rock fall and topple, whereas when you talk about mostly debris type of flow, the debris type of soils, then they are expected to slide, and in very few conditions of more water content or more moisture in the soil, then they are expected also to have a small spread. However, the fine grained soils again mostly tend to have these two type of flows, that is spread and flow. So now we can understand that different types of material provide you different types of different types of movements. So based on these particular movements, we can understand what to expect from this particular disaster, which is termed as landslides. So when you look into the classification of this particular material and the movements, then the major component which comes into this is can we look into something called as risk mitigation. Can we mitigate the problem of landslides? Then yes, we can do it, or we have been doing it. What are the options we have? Number one is structural measures. So we construct good amount of structures. I'll try to define it slightly later. And the second is non-structural measures. Now, what does this non-structural measures mean? Non-structural measures is like giving you a sort of warning, maybe slightly before this. So for example, if we don't talk exactly about landslide disaster risk reduction, if we talk about say flood disaster risk reduction, which have been really wonderfully brought into practice by India, our Indian National Disaster Management Authority, where now when we talk about floods, I'm sure it will be very difficult to talk about structural mitigation corresponding to any disaster related to floods. However, there are a lot of non-structural measures which have been very evident, and we have been showing few case studies, very good success studies from 2020, from 2018 in Orissa to 2019 in West Bengal. Also in 2020 in West Bengal, we showed really very good approach towards risk reduction in floods. So what do you mean by non-structural measures? Is watching, observing, predicting, and then warning. And accordingly, we are going to go for risk reduction methods such as moving of people or something where we don't exactly involve any major structural intervention related to the disaster risk reduction. Now, just try to understand how can probably risk reduction can be done by using non-structural measures. Then I will just try to take you through this qualitative risk analysis. So that is why we don't call it landslide mitigation, we call it risk mitigation. When you talk risk into picture, then we need to understand what are the various aspects associated with risk. So typically, if I say again quantitatively, from this slide to one particular slide, again I'm going to point out, we are going to talk about qualitative. We are not going to any quantities, or we are not going to look into that particular numbers or associated figures associated with this risk. I'm just trying to give you a small idea, a rough idea about the qualitative risk assessment. So when we talk about risk, then it's about a combination of factors which are hazard and consequence. So what is hazard? Hazard is a chance of happening of an event. And what is consequence? When this particular event occurs, which is termed as hazard. Now, what is the associated loss? It can be due to life of human or destruction of some assets, or it can also be because of some environmental damages. So for example, if I look into the hazard of landslide, then what can be the consequences? One, people can lose their lives. Number two, the roads and the communication would have been got disrupted because of the landslides. And three, yes, sometimes it so happens that if the landslide is huge, though it doesn't claim life in some of the region, in some of the places or in some regions. However, it can also wash out a lot of trees or a lot of environmental what do you call this? It can be animal life, it can be human or anything which is detrimental to environmental issues. So that's where we talk about the risk as a factor which includes three parameters: hazard, elements at risk. Now, what is this element of risk? At risk, what is the value of element of risk? Whether we are going to lose life, or is it going to be infrastructure, or is it going to be some natural habitat which is going to be disturbed because of which because of the hazard. And then vulnerability. Now, what is vulnerability? Vulnerability is whether this particular hazard which is going to happen with this amount of value of risk is going to happen at what scale. I'll just try to give you a small example on this particular line. Okay, for example, if I have a slope, a falling slope, when I draw a line, straight line very near to straight line, then it's understood that this soil is going to fail. And then now you can see I'm going to have a small hutment or a small settlement, and I'm going to have a large settlement. Okay, I'm just trying to give you again some qualitative example. I'm going to have a small settlement and I'm going to have a large settlement. So for example, if suppose there is a slide which is happening here, this amount of slide is now it's understood that this is going to be unstable and this is going to be fall at any given point of time. So now if you want to understand what is the hazard, yes, this is going to happen. So hazard is 1, for example, hazard is 1. Then number 2, what is this hutment? It's a small hutment. So what is the element of risk of this particular hutment? Maybe just let me tell you that compared to this, for example, if I give this element as 1, for example, I'll give you the value of this particular hut because it's going to be small, or this particular settlement which is small. So probably I'll take it as maybe 0.25, 0.5 or 0.4 just for understanding. And now if you look into the vulnerability of the element at risk, for example, at this particular position, I talk about the vulnerability, then the chance of this hitting this is going to be high. So I will value probably this to be on the higher scale. So for example, if I take this one, that if it falls, then definitely it is going to disturb here. However, if this falls, it is not going to disturb this, but still I will expect there should be some issue or something associated with this. So probably here I will take this particular vulnerability, say for example 0.3. So when you look into now, what if I calculate the risk associated with this, then the question comes, then the calculations are simple. So just to give you a quick idea, then the point of this is going to be 0.4 and the risk associated with this is 0.3. So for example, if I tell you the chance of or the risk associated with this particular problem is going to be 0.7. Okay, now let me tell you, never you are going to get any such numbers. I'm just trying to give you very random numbers so that you just try to understand what, when we talk about risk, how this particular risk is risk is calculated. When you look into the actually the element of risk or the value of risk, then it's going to be a huge work. And when we talk about vulnerability, then we are going to take a lot of options in vulnerability. It is going to be spatial, it's going to be temporal, it's going to be also based on the based on a lot of analysis which you do on this particular hazard. What type of material is this? If it's suppose if it is rock, then the chance of this particular rock to reach this particular level is going to be comparatively high. Whereas if this is soil with a lot of water, then the chance of this particular soil or this debris to reach this particular point is comparatively higher. Okay, so there are a lot of probability and a lot of work which is done in this particular area, which I'm not going to focus as part of this. I'm just trying to again give you an idea about what is risk and how we try to look into the aspect of risk. For your just information, the same risk is also used for looking into the current situation which is going on as COVID. Okay, so in COVID also they do risk analysis and they will try to see how this risk can be mitigated or what is the vulnerability and what is the elements of value at risk. Okay, so that's what probably you should be going through all in the newspapers if you are following them subsequently for almost a year now. So when we look into now what is the options we have on risk management is, first you have to establish risk. What is the amount of risk we are having in the process? Then we are going to identify what is the risk. For example, just now I told you there is a landslide which is happening and it is going to fall. Risk analysis, yes, we have done. We have got it that there are 2 settlements and accordingly the risk is 0.7, for example, from the earlier example. Now I'm going to evaluate the risk, whether how much of this 0.7 is going to be workable. For example, if there is a rock or if there is a soil, what type of expectations can I have, and whether this risk can be evaluated to be, for example, if the small hut is going to be, the small settlement is going to be something like industry, then it is expected that the time of this particular industry or the time of people being in this particular industry is time controlled. Okay, we are going to have high amount of staff in the working hours in the probably in the morning time, whereas in the night time the number of people living in this particular industry can be less. So, but whereas it's going to be reverse when we talk about a settlement or a house accommodation with respect to the risk. So we are going to evaluate what type of risk we are talking about, and then we will look into what are the options we have for risk treatment. Now, when we are doing all this, then the major important parameters which we require is one is monitoring and the other is communication and consultation. How to take into the aspect of risk identification and how the risk treatment will be done. Then again, we are going to establish a context how this risk treatment is going to get down, and then again we are going to identify what can be the risk after the treatment. It's not that if you construct a retaining wall, it's going to stop the condition or it is going to control the situation at that particular point. Again, it will lead to another risk. So we are going to do a cyclic assessment of risk, and then we are trying to understand which type of the material or how the decision can be made in terms of uncertainty, which is going to be far more difficult. If you include more uncertainty, then again the problem is going to be higher. Okay, so that's how we are going to approach for a particular risk assessment or risk management associated with the slide. Maybe we are talking about landslides here. As I told you again, it can be used for any types of disaster, including earthquake or including the biological disaster which we are currently going on, which is like COVID. Okay, then what are all the major factors we need to look out for risk management is first, what can cause harm, what is the problem associated with the hazard which is going to happen, and then what is the probability or how often, what is the frequency of this particular problem, and then if at all if it happens, what can go wrong, and then how bad are the consequences and what should be done. As I told you again, if you just try to look into these 5 questions on COVID, I'm sure we are having a lot of understanding. Sorry, a lot of understanding. Now, if I tell you that the structural mitigation for COVID is vaccination, till date we have been following non-structural mitigation by following safe distancing, mask and sanitizing and all these particular aspects. So that's how we can differentiate the difference between, or we can differentiate the structural and non-structural mitigation associated with any particular risk. Now, what are the various points again we have? How can we assess or quantify the risk? Okay, then the question comes in. Yes, we have different types of methods by which we can compute the hazard. I'm sure all of you should be doing different types of analysis. If you are coming from earthquake, if you are looking at some disaster landslides, or if you are looking for settlement of your buildings, etc., we have huge number of work or huge number of equations or huge number of methods by which we approach for understanding the hazard. So in this, there are heuristic methods which are mostly taken up by the local site or local problems or local information. Then statistical methods, we will try to find out different methods by which we will try to understand the data or the problems associated or the numbers associated with the hazard, and we are going to go for some statistical analysis. Then these days now a lot of probabilistic methods are now into picture. I'm sure if you are looking into work which is published by most of the researchers, at least from India and other areas, especially in the lines of disaster, then we talk more about having some reliability methods. And when you have this reliability analysis, then we are going to have different types of methods like first order, second moment equation, or first order reliable moment equation, second order reliable moment equation. Okay, so we are going to have different types of methods by which we can understand the reliability, followed by which this is another very common simulation which is done, which is Monte Carlo simulations. Then depending upon the type of the problems we have, either we go for point estimation or we go for event tree analysis for computation of different types of hazard. And these methods which I'm listing out are more famous or more workable in landslide related problems. So it can differ again with the different types of hazards or different types of problems you are looking in your own areas. Then qualitative risk analysis, as we have been discussing, it's going to be simple. First, we are going to take very typical of understanding by using qualitative. So we are going to have different types of methods, either by using a 4x4 matrix or 4x6 matrix or 7x7 matrix, or simply we can also go for a 3x3 matrix, which I'll try to explain you in the given time we have. So when we talk about qualitative risk, then what we can do, as we told, risk is a combination of hazard and consequence. So I'm going to have two scales, hazard and consequence, because they are multiplied, hazard into consequence. So what we are going to do, we are going to divide the happening of a hazard and the consequence associated with this into three simple scales. We have been probably giving feedbacks, or we have been doing a lot of such analysis by using simple concepts like low, medium and high, low, medium and high, and then we are going to rate where our particular problem is going to fall. And as per this particular matrix, you can see the point at which the hazard is going to be high. Hazard is going to be high, then we are going to have the options of medium and high risk, and where the consequence is going to high, again we are going to have the options of only having medium and high risk. Okay, however, when the hazard is also low and the consequence is also low, we are terming it as low. Medium to medium, now we have to take a chance how medium we are talking about. Now this depends on the sensitivity. For example, if you think the sensitivity of the problem is high, then probably I'll not go for 3x3 matrix. I will go for a 4x7 matrix or 4x6 matrix or 4x5 matrix, depending on which of the component is important. Okay, for most of the nuclear related problems, they are going to look into more consequence related, then probably onto the hazard related. Okay, so there I'm going to have more consequence lines than having more hazard line, because the chance of a happening of a hazard in a nuclear power station is going to be comparatively very less because of the engineering design which we are going to do. It depends again on different context and different conditions on which they try to do. So how to do this, how to look into the risk factor, then we are going to say something on the name of risk indicator, which we are going to say as a this hazard indicator multiplied by the consequence indicator. Now how to get a hazard indicator, then we are going to give scores for different parameters which we are going to consider, and we are going to give assign some weightage, and then we are going to take what can be a probability or what can be the hazard indicator, and accordingly we are going to do the same for consequence by using its consequence terms, number of housings, number of dwellings, whether you have power lines, whether you have buildings, what is the effect of floods, and lastly what is the weightage factor associated with this particular numbers. For example, if you have humans in buildings, then we are going to have higher weightage compared to human in a industry, because the density or the time of people living in buildings is going to be higher than the time people will be spending in the industry on a given temporal scale. Similarly, when I have buildings, then I'm going to look in the aspects of having more consequence associated, and then if at all the landslide happened and there is a formation of flood, then what can be the effect of the flood is again another consequence function which I'll be looking at. Okay, so like this we need to cut the concept of either hazard and indicator into different factors. However, this particular case study which I'm trying to tell you from this particular point comes from Norway, from one of my collaborator, Dr. Vikas Thakur. So I took most of this data from his understanding or from his from him. So I'm just trying to give you a small idea about how they did this in Norway, in one of the regions where we are going to talk about a little of risk analysis here. So for example, when I take about a chance of happening of an earlier landslide, then I'll give a weightage of 1, because it's going wherever the landslides keep on happening, then probably the chance of the happening of a landslide in that particular location can be comparatively low. So I don't give more weightage for it. But however, when I have a triggering factor like having pore pressure, or for example, if the road has been cut or the area has been cut by cut for any landslide, for any road or for any housing development, then it is going to give a worsening effect. So that is why I'm going to go for a high weightage. However, you can also see -3 here when I'm talking about a for example, if when you're cutting this particular road not vertically but giving a slope or something like that, then it's going to be adding to the effect of hazard, or it's going to decrease the hazard. So I'm going to have a negative indicator. Similarly, if at all the pore pressures are under pressure, then it is going to add to slope stability. So thereby I'm going to give it a negative. I'm going to give a negative number associated with this. So accordingly, I'm going to do a risk analysis based on this particular factor. For example, if I say I have taken a particular site where I'm going to have all this ticked in yellow, then probably how I'll try to do is I'm going to multiply the score with the weightage which is given. Okay, so it's something like this is 2, this is 4, then this is 2 into 3, this is going to be 6. Similarly, it is 1 multiplied by 3. For example, I take this, I don't take this, so it's going to be 3. Then again 6. Then sensitivity, I don't have any clay in the soil, so I don't consider this. So here it is going to be 3. Here it is going to be 3 into 2, 6. I don't consider again this. Okay, so I'm going to factor out how much is the how much is the score, and the highest score possible here is 50. So I'm going to see what is the amount of score here. So for example, it is like 20. One goes here, so it's going to be 30. Okay, so it's 30 divided by the highest score is 51. So I will see what is the percentage associated with this, and I'm going to see where this particular number is coming as 30 by 51. Similarly, I'm going to do the same from here. Now again, for example, I'll get something like 20 by how much is here 45. Okay, so I'm going to now, when I talk about the risk, then I'm going to multiply the 30 by 51 and 45 by 20 by 45. Then I'm going to get a number, and this particular number now I'm going to get as risk. So I can cut this particular risk with respect to these particular numbers, and I can say if it is falling in this low, it is low. If it is falling here, it is medium, and if it is falling here, then it is going to be high. So I know now what type of risk I'm dealing with, whether it is going to be high, whether it is going to be low, and accordingly I can make some hazard map which looks like this. I'm going to put only 3 scales here: high, medium, low. So again, as I told that I have taken this information from Vikas Thakur. All the information on the map is all in Norwegian. So sorry for that. However, as we go ahead now, if you do the same thing on risk analysis, then I'm going on a scale of 5. Okay, now we can see very clearly the difference where I talk about a region which is falling into high risk zone here, doesn't look into, sorry, high hazard zone here, doesn't fall into high risk zone. It is falling as number 4. However, the particular region, one particular region which is coming in both as high is only this particular region. So for example, if I want to make a risk approach for this particular problem, then probably I'll take this particular approach. I will probably look into first into this particular problem, and then I'm going to go into different areas, and I may develop a risk susceptibility or risk mitigation plan depending on such type of risk map, instead of simply going for only hazard map. Because if you go for hazard map, then probably I'm not making a 100% effort, or I may not go for a 100% sustainability on this particular aspect. So that's how risk analysis is important to understand. So sorry. So now when I go into this particular aspect, then we have to understand, for example, when I have high risk. So for example, if I say that my particular problem is failing into this particular zone, which is having medium hazard and high consequence, then how to approach or how to make this particular problem. Now we can see how the approach can be made is, first I can reduce the risk. I will reduce the probability. I will reduce the hazard. So for example, I'll construct some retaining wall, or I'll try to go for some risk mitigation method, some structural method, and then I will try to aware the people that there is a chance of a happening of a hazard here, and I will try to reduce the consequence associated with this particular problem. It can be done by using this. The second is, okay, I will not go for any structural mitigation, but what I will do is I will evacuate the total place, and I will reduce the risk by simply getting into by removing all the elements of risk, and I'll try to reduce the risk associated with the problem. For example, sorry, I don't have much space here. I'll just try to do the same here. That like this, I'll try to take the same problem what we tried to solve. So we are going to have a settlement here. So we discussed that we are going to have a small settlement here, and we are going to have a big settlement here, or a big industry, or a big housing setup. Okay, typically like this. So now if I want to do a hazard analysis here, we have discussed that this is going to be 1, whereas the probability with this is 0.4 and with this is 0.3. Now what I'll do now, for example, if this is 0.7, then it is falling into this particular area where the risk is definitely going to happen, or the hazard is going to happen, and whether it is going to hit this particular area or not. So my approach will be, for example, if I had to talk about this particular approach, if I want to go reduce the if I want to look at this particular problem, then first what I'll try to do is I will try to reduce the consequence. So what I'll try to do is I will move these particular people outside this particular place. Sorry, the slope went off. Okay. So I will try to move these people out of this particular place or move the settlement out of this particular place. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to reduce the consequence. Okay. Now I take out the people or I move this particular settlement from here, and then I'm going to construct a barrier. I'm going to construct a barrier. So this barrier, when this falls, then it is going to contain within itself. It will not allow anything to happen for this particular building. Okay. Then I'm constructing a structural measure. So I'm going to move in this particular direction. So this is going to be reducing the consequence and reducing the first reducing the consequence, then I'm going to reduce the hazard associated with this particular point. Now, if you want to say how to travel from here to here is, again, simple. If I have a problem here and if I have a settlement here and another settlement here, then what I'll try to do, I'll try to go for some anchoring method or something by which I will not allow the hazard to happen, where I'm now traveling directly from here. Okay, I'm not going to go for any consequence reduction. I'm directly taking care of reducing the risk associated with this. So I'll try to move in this particular direction. Okay, so when I'm reducing the hazard, then the hazard is directly falling down. The hazard is directly falling down, and I'm going to reduce the risk directly into the hazard zone. So like this, we need to see how different approaches can be made to solve one particular problem instead of going for only structural mitigation in all the aspects. So this is what maybe we call on the line of having more sustainability in the approach. So that's how the risk-based approach is always most of the time sustainable. So looking at this, when I again look into the same risk mitigation aspects into this particular problem, then as we discussed, we have structural measures and we have non-structural measures. When you go for structural measures, I'm going to explain in the next slide, but I'll just probably talk about the non-structural measures. When you talk about non-structural measures, then I'm going to have three different zones or three different scales at which we can do the non-structural measurement is by having some regional threshold. So for example, in the region, we expect that the rainfall is going to be constant. So for a given region, I can say if suppose there is a rainfall which is crossing one particular threshold, then there is a good amount of chance of landslide to happen in this particular area. Then I can give you landslide rainfall approach. Then in the second option, when you have zones, then it's very difficult because in a rainfall area, it's going to be a huge area. So when I want to come into a smaller extent, then I will go for probably some data driven models by which I'll collect data from the site and I'll try to see what is the chance of hazard in this particular zone. I'll do hazard zonation, and this hazard zonation can be done by using different data driven models. And lastly, when I go for a local measurement, for example, if I have one particular site which is like very dangerous or which is very prone to hazard, then I'll go for field scale monitoring, where I'm going to have some monitoring methods which are developed in the skill or which are employed in that particular place, and then I'm going to go for field scale monitoring by using another method. So whatever information we are going to get from it, we are going to monitor the slopes. Basically, all these aspects come into the line called monitoring. And by using monitoring, we are going to approach for a non-structural measure. So as I say again, we are not going to go for any typical structural measures. So what are the various structural measures we have? Sorry, I think I missed this slide somewhere. Sorry for that. I'll try to give it to the end of the presentation if I can find it somewhere. So sorry for that, but I'm sure all of us being in geotechnical engineering, mostly we are looking on how structural mitigations can be made, or structural measures like retaining wall anchors or different types of walls which we have, protection walls, barrier walls, geonets, etc. All these particular options, I'm sure we know. Probably Dr. Minimal Corolla from McAfee should have given you very good idea about the structural measures. So we can look at it as per the requirement in the risks. So when we look into the non-structural measures, then it is very difficult to go for a landslide monitoring, especially when I say in that particular area. When I told you that in a 14-kilometer stretch, I have 80 landslides. Now the biggest problem here will be how to understand which of this particular area is susceptible to landslide. And number two, if I want to go for monitoring, again, you can see 82 monitoring in 14 kilometers. Now, if you look into what are the different types of methods we have been already existing in monitoring, is the global positioning system GPS. We install GPS and we will see what is the relative distance between the two GPS. LIDAR, if somebody is from Uttarakhand or if you have studied any case studies from Uttarakhand landslides earlier, then you'll be having a lot of LIDAR mapping which is done in this particular area to understand what is the deformations and displacements which are appearing on the ground, and they are trying to estimate what can be chance of happening of a landslide by using LIDAR technology. Similarly, these days, because of the improvement in the UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones especially, so we can have quadcopters, we can have different aerial photography methods by which you can get for one particular site or for a low resolution or low scale mapping which can be done by using UAVs. Next, we have the same happening through radar satellites, where the photography is we obtain different photographs and we try to understand what is the difference in the photographs over the time and try to see some areas or some places where there are deformations which are formed in the slopes. And then at that particular areas, normally we go for conventional geotechnical landslide monitoring. I'm sure again you should have gone across a lot of cases or some instrumentation, including piezometers, including tensiometers, piezometers, tensiometers, also tilt meters, extensometers. Based on the different types of soils and different types of movements you are expecting in the soil, we go for different conventional landslide monitoring sensors. But however, most of these particular methods which we are talking about are very expensive also, as well as the major issue with most of these particular methods are real-time monitoring, where it's very difficult to have any real-time assessment from these particular locations by these particular techniques. So that's why we thought that there can be a need with the improvement which is happening in MEMS area, that is micro electrical mechanical systems. Okay, so if you have MEMS, most of these MEMS, I'm sure all of us carrying on day-to-day life by using different gadgets like the tab which I'm using, or the smartphone which all of us are having in our hand. It has a number of MEMS sensors installed inside this, which can tell you which way to go, which side to move. They can detect your motion. I'm sure if you are wearing these bands, smart bands these days, then you can track how many footsteps you have made, how much distance you have traversed, what is your heartbeat, what is your blood pressure. There are now many number of not destructive testing which has been happening in different areas, including medical and all these things. So we took this as one of the major understanding, and we started looking into how this MEMS can be used also for landslide monitoring, which will be a part of this particular presentation, which I'll be going through. So, sorry. So looking at it first, to look into understanding of what we need to monitor by using these MEMS sensors. It's very simple to say use MEMS sensors for monitoring, but the major question here will be, what are you going to monitor? How are you going to monitor, and what are the various aspects we have to look into monitoring? For example, when I talk about 82 landslides in this particular area, which are in green and green dots, as you can see. Okay, so these are 82 landslides. Now, if I ask you a question that now which slide is going to happen and how many monitoring stations I'm going to have, and what are the various monitoring parameters we have to take up from this particular study, then it is going to be difficult to understand, or we may have to go for literature study and try to understand how they are doing. Or the second can be, we can collect our own data and try to understand what our data speaks about anything related to monitoring. So based on this, what we try to do is we try to go to this particular site. We did the first site characterization, which is done by geological. So you can see a lot of geological information on this particular site. What are the different types of geology in this particular area? And then from all the locations, we try to get all the geotechnical parameters, which we normally do in our lab on the day-to-day basis, including particle size distribution, gradation, general characteristics, Atterberg limits. Then I'm going to have parameters such as saturated density, gamma, OMC, optimum moisture content, saturated moisture content in the soils, which gives us an idea how the soil is behaving with respect to saturated, because all the landslides which is happening in this particular location falls into the category which is called as rainfall induced landslides, which is going to happen more on the lands on the rainfall during the rainfall period. So that is why the moisture content plays major important role here. Then what is the proportion of the soil, porosity, then permeability, how fast or how slow the water is moving in this particular zone, so that when there is a rainfall, I know what can I expect from this particular slope. And then apart from this, we also collected a lot of information from the field, which includes the field moisture content, slope angle, elevation. Sorry for this particular point where angle of internal friction and cohesion are not measured in the field, but we have collected the data from the field and we did the test in the lab, directional test, to get these values of cohesion and internal friction. So when we collected these parameters from 82 locations, and we had 22 parameters, and out of which somewhere in 2019 I'm talking about, when there were only 58 landslides and there were 24 no landslide sites. So it is very difficult for using any simple logistic method or statistical method in order to get an understanding from such a high data, which is like 82 and 22 parameters, to understand intrinsic parameters. So that is why we tried to use machine learning here in order to understand what are the factors which are corresponding to the failure of slopes in this particular area, which is Mandi. So for this particular failures, we have now, as I told you, we have both the data, that is landslides and no landslide locations of 82 locations, and from each of the locations we have collected all the information, geological, geotechnical and hydrogeotechnical parameters which are required for ascertaining what are the parameters which are indicating a slope failure. So for this we made a machine learning program in which we have divided we have taken the factors, they are divided into training and testing. Most of the time training goes to 70%, whereas testing goes to 30%, and then all this training will go through typical models which are existing in machine learning, or sometimes we may have to go for ensemble methods depending on the variations or depending on multivariate or univariate type of problems we are trying to solve as a part of this particular program. And then we are going to identify a technique, and then we are going to test, and then we are going to validate the method, and this particular validation of the method can now be included ranking of these parameters, and then we are going to choose based on the machine learning what are the various contributing factors, which we have considered 22. So for example, if I take 22 parameters from here, and after doing all this particular analysis, probably I can go to have 5 or 6 parameters which are most contributing. Then these parameters can be given, can give us a good idea about ascertaining the happening of a landslide in a location. However, as we discussed, we have a lot of issues on understanding probability as well as errors associated with these particular problems, which we are also going to take care of as a part of this particular analysis. So for doing this, we use this type of analysis where we use TP, FP, true positive, false positive, true negative and false negative. Again, if you are going through news regarding the COVID, you should be using again the same parameters, how you are testing, how the reliability of your testing can be checked by using these particular parameters. So based on this, we also get in parameters such as sensitivity, specificity, accuracy, and we have area under the curves and kappa statistics, which are indicators of how good a particular model is giving us. For example, while we are training, we are seeing that few of the models are giving us an accuracy of 100%. However, these particular models, when we go for testing, these are training and these are testing parameters. So when we are testing, then the same parameters, if you look into the same models, SVM, MLP and RF, which are simple vector machine, multi-layer perceptron and random forest methods. If you see, then these numbers are, random forest and MLP. So as you can see, these two methods, they are really not well on their particular performance based on their testing. Training, they are not well. However, if you look into the next level, in the testing, we saw that the decision tree method is giving us a better values, and the next comparatively we are getting better on random forest. Okay, so we finalize that these two can be good techniques or good machine learning techniques which can be used for looking into the susceptibility or the probability of having a landslide depending on the different factors. So looking at this, now we did the same grading analysis, which we call it. So we try to take all the parameters and we try to classify them with respect to the problem of landslide, where we have 56 landslide locations and 24 non-landslide locations. So based on this, we try to differentiate the particular differentiate the problem with respect to different conditions, and we do something called as correlative feature selection method. correlation feature selection method. So by using this particular analysis, we can find what is the ranking associated with each of this particular parameter on the happening of a failure. We define the happening of a failure as 1 and the happening of a non-failure is 0, and we try to get in parameters and we'll see what is the contribution of each of these parameter in order to get a outcome of either 1 or 0 corresponding to each of this. So then we understood that the relative compaction, porosity are giving us good amount of correlation, whereas the other parameters, that is field moisture content, permeability and angle of internal friction, are giving us comparatively we can say rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all the ranks, the serial numbers can also be talked about rank. Okay, so highest rank is obtained by relative compaction, followed by porosity, then field moisture content, permeability, angle of internal friction. After this, the ranks are the variation has been found to be very high. So that is why we can say that the first 5 parameters are one of the most important or one of the most indicating parameters. The same when we checked by using the same decision tree and then random forest methods, then we saw that the accuracy is increasing by adding more parameters. So if I take only one factor, the accuracy is somewhere near to 0.65 or 0.77, whereas at 5 it is coming to almost like 91 to 97%. So we saw a trend and we saw that this is the point at which we are getting the optimum. So by this study, we can conclude by saying that the 5 out of the 5 parameters, we have 5 parameters which are indicating which are called as the causal factors, or what are the factors which are prominently indicating a chance of happening of a landslide. So if you look into all of these parameters, then at a given point, it can be said that most of the parameters remain comparatively consistent or they are going to be constant till the moisture content in this particular factors are going to be constant. So we have decided based on the different literature, they also have identified different types of parameters which are affecting in their particular site, as you can see. But however, in our particular study, we understood that these are the 5 parameters, and we can see that this is a very novel parameters, or these are the novel set of parameters, while the parameters remain more or less floated in different countries. The parameters still remain the same, but however the combination of the parameters is what has been found different for our particular study. So we have considered that these are the parameters which we need to monitor in case of going for any understanding of slope failure to happen at a particular location. So when you look into, again, while most of the other parameters are constant for a given site, for a given location, because of the happening of a landslide, there can be a chance of change in the parameter of moisture content, where all the other parameters are going to remain more or less indicative of the amount of moisture content. For example, if the moisture content increases, the angle of internal friction decreases, porosity increases, permeability increases, porosity remains more or less constant. It doesn't change at a place, and the relative compaction again is going to change with respect to saturated density or dry density. Accordingly, it's going to change. So this is what we have finalized from this particular study, which we have published. I'm sorry, I'm not able to get. Okay, so this particular study is now published, and this particular study has been published, and these particular parameters we have got in, and we understood that the most important parameter which we need to understand from the site is going to be the field moisture content, followed by these parameters, which is relative compaction, porosity, permeability, and angle of internal friction, are going to give us a parameters to confirm the location of sensors. So based on this, we can develop a method. Sorry, just a minute. I'm sorry, there is a landline call, so I cannot stop it. Sorry for the break. So yeah, continuing on the same. So we fixed these particular parameters, and then we went ahead. Now the major point, what we needed for measuring or for doing a monitoring, we could understand from this particular study by using machine learning. Then sorry, this is the same slide which we talked about. Then when we looked into, then we have come into a point that the soil moisture is one of the major component which we need to measure in the particular location for understanding the susceptibility of landslides. And as I told you that all these particular landslides happened majorly during the rainfall due to the intensity of rainfall. So we have our own rain gauge, as a part of our sensing, which is also MEMS based. Then apart from this, we have to confirm, because of at a point of time when we call it a landslide, then the first parameter or the first definition itself says that we need to talk about a movement which is happening in this particular location, which is like accelerometer. And then we are going to have a force sensor, which is going to talk about impending moisture increasing in the soil after a particular level. Then we are going to also include environment parameters, like for example, temperature, humidity, and light sensor, which are going to give us an idea about what can you expect after a particular rainfall incident in the particular location. And as we can see, we collect all the information and we try to load it into a cloud, depending with the basis of GSM module. So you can see a very combination of all this. Few of this, for example, light sensors, accelerometer sensor, and GSM. This is the same things which we have lifted up from the smartphone. Also the force sensor, which you also have in the screen, most of the screens. Whereas rain gauge is again technically available, and also you can find most of these particular sensors in our day-to-day shopping site. It can be Amazon, Flipkart, or any of these particular measures. So, and all of this cost really less compared to what we have on a regular conventional scale. So that's a major point. But however, it is not very sure that when you select this method, these components, they are going to work. So what we did is initially to go for some training of this particular sensors. So we need to train them for different understanding. For example, this is the setup which is used for training the moisture content by using soil moisture sensors. And then we have packed all the soil in a particular box, and then we tried to place all our sensors, and we lifted the ramp so that the soil slides. And when the soil is sliding, we observed that most of our accelerometers, which are giving us the values of displacement, has started giving us some information initially. So we understood that most of these particular sensors which we are taking up are trying to give us an idea about a movement which is happening inside a small box, which looks something like this. You can see a lot of wires and monitoring and all this which is happening inside our area when we are trying to do the same soil, which we are trying to move as a part of this particular experiment. And this experiment and the combination of these parameters, we immediately filed a patent somewhere in 2018. And this patent is currently under examination, and we are expecting this to come soon. However, the way the sensors work and what are the various parameters we are trying to judge as a part of this whole exercise is already published I'll share you the list of publication to the end of this work. So if at all you want to take up how to do all this calibration and testing of these particular parameters, then we have accelerometer. So this accelerometer is the same again which you have in your mobile, which helps you to find the direction as well as the movement. For example, when you are probably looking into this taxi related apps like Ola or Uber, then they tell you how much far is your person or is your driver and which way you are moving, and whether their movement is going fine, or are you moving in the same direction of where you have to reach. Also the same thing happens in your Google Maps, or if you use any tracking device or something like that. So we use the same sensor. So for that, the major component is here. As we are getting accelerations, we want to convert it as a point of displacement as well as velocity. We know single integration of acceleration gives us velocity and double integration gives us displacement. So we used a time scale. This is the amount of time, that is 1 millisecond. 1 millisecond is the time which is used for getting the data from the accelerometer. So we give it we take the same time interval and we calculate the same displacement from the formula ut plus half at square. That is the kinetic equation, and the time period here, as I told you, will be limited to 1 millisecond, and accordingly we will get the displacement corresponding to the value of accelerations which the sensor is noting over the time. Okay, then based on this particular displacements, we are going to stack up the displacements, and then we are going to calculate the z-score depending on what is the amount of displacement which is happening and what is the mean and what is the standard deviation of this particular movements happening over the time. And this we are going to do it across all the three sides, that is x direction, y direction, and z direction. And depending on these particular movements, we look into the z-score, and these movements are classified into small, medium, and large. So we give an interval something like whenever the values are when the z-score, sorry, when the z-score is near to 1, mean plus 1 sigma, mu plus 1 sigma, then we call it as low. Mu plus 1.65 sigma, we call it as medium. And when it talks about 2 mu, then we are going to talk about this being very high. So we we try to classify these movements, and then depending on the movements, we can raise alerts, which looks something like this. So you can see a data which is collected over point of time for about 1 hour. So there are happening of a small movements which are happening over the time. Okay, and they keep accumulating. They keep accumulating, and if at all they continue, then they are going to breach slowly one and the other levels which we have kept, and then these particular movements at a particular location, Balinala 2. Okay, they are going to convert into now moderate movements. Similarly, the moderate movements keep happening over the time, and they again try to convert into high. Now, when there is a when the rainfall is stopped, then depending on the ambient temperature and heat conditions, the soil again gets dried and the moisture falls, and then slowly we can see the movements also keep decreasing. So we have been maintaining the data on soil moisture and displacement over the time. Now we are seeing how these particular values on soil moisture and displacement can be useful for going for thresholding for a given slide happening or a movement happening in the soil. So depending on this is the framework which we have made, the landslide monitoring and early warning system framework which we have developed. So all the system in this particular line, we are going to collect all the information from our sensors which are present in the site, and then we are going to put it using microcontroller unit. We are going to log the data, and this data is going to be sent to GSM module, and this GSM module sends all the information into cloud. And in the cloud, we have this threshold comparison, the one which I explained just in the previous slide, and the thresholds are compared. If the thresholds are breached, then they release some alert. When and this keeps on happening for every 10 minutes of our scale, in which we are collecting the data from various locations where the sensors are already placed. So we have got we have again filed a patent on the same on this particular framework, and the same has been extended to international patent. Again, both the patents are in examination stage. We are expecting them to be granted soon. So looking at it quickly, because we are living in IIT Mandi, which is highly prone to all these particular slides and all these particular areas, we took our sensor to a slide which is very near to IIT Mandi, where our team, we have deployed the sensors. Somewhere you can see a small crack which is generated in the soil. So we buried all our sensors in this particular location, and then all our units of measurement are the units and the microcontroller and the GSM module, all of them are present in this box. Initially, typically you can see all the wires going on into the soil to collect as information as possible, and then after some time you can see the same location has cracked and it has fallen, giving us a lot of information on the type of soil and the slides which happen. So we collect, as I told you, we collect all the data: time, humidity, pressure, rainfall, light intensity. It was not working. Then we have different accelerations. So for example, we have 9 degrees of acceleration, including acceleration XYZ direction. Then this is omega, that is rotation across x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. Then we are going to have two-side or three-dimensional rotation, that is either by using pitch or roll or yaw, which are again different dimensions of accelerations which we can get from this particular accelerometer of this particular sensor. And then the force which is exerted with the soil, because it was fallen before after that, so that's why it is 0, where the moisture, volumetric moisture content remains to be constant again across the particular location because of no rainfall in this particular area. So all these particular values are always raw, and we try to have our own calibrating values by which we can convert all this into displacements and soil moisture and displacement, soil moisture and forces as per the requirement from the site. By the end of this particular presentation, I will try to show you a site in which you can get this information real time. So when we got the initial success from our laboratory, then we have taken it to a to a slide which happened in 2017. This is famous slide which is called as Scotropy, which happened somewhere near in 2017, and this particular site falls known to be somewhere around 50 kilometers from IIT Mandi, and this slide has almost like 3 lakh debris which has flown out in this particular slide area. You can see very clearly, and this has flown down to almost 1 kilometer down the slope, and there is a huge population, or there is a small settlement just behind this who were lucky to not have been drained out by this particular debris movement in this particular area. Then after 2017, we have been working on this particular area. As I told you, in 2018, we started having our work going on properly. We also filed patents, so we could show some initial success of our sensors to the district administration, and we could take this particular opportunity of going on this slide. Normally, when the slide happens in the coming rainfall, normally there will be subsequent slides in this particular location. So we could get permission from district administration, and we have installed our sensors at the given locations in order to check if there is any movement happening in this place. So our sensor box now, from whatever I showed you on the white boxes, now become more formal, or more looking like this, where all our units are present inside this, whereas the sensors which are needed, like soil moisture sensor, acceleration sensors, are all present inside this particular box. Inside this particular box, and our engage is on the extended stem, and all our sensors are powered by using solar panels, which looks something like this. So, and our sensors currently are on the surface location, so we hardly have our sensors going only 1 feet deep or half a meter deep into the soil. We are not going to go for currently we started doing subsurface monitoring. Currently we are only restricting our work only on the top soil, or on the surface level of the soil, because in a landslide, whenever there is a mass landslide happening, then there is a good chance that the surface slides come similarly with the point at which the slide is also happening, or the surface displacements are comparatively higher than the displacements which are exactly happening at the failure zone. Okay, so our data is captured. I just showed you a glimpse on how the data looks like, and the same data you can also get it in graphic scale, where you can understand what is the difference happening in the site location. So based on this, we have developed a landslide monitoring system, and along with the system, we have also connected it to alarm system very near to the road by which this slide was passing. And this system is now very low cost because of the MEMS sensors which we are using, hardly costing few thousands of rupees, whereas the total technology, including the solar panel and all, comes into 50,000 to 60,000 rupees, depending on the type of parameters which we are trying to estimate on a given location. Whereas the conventional system, like a tilt meter or a extensometer, cost you somewhere in lakhs and crores of rupees. So that's a major development which we made, and all our work are patented, and we are going to give you all our work is patented, and we can give you data monitoring, or we can give you all the data real time. And we have also alarming poles, which with a warning pole in the slide, where we are trying to monitor the slide by using wireless communications, and we are going to have hooters and blinkers at the alarming system at the site in order to control any movement of vehicles on that particular road. And we are going to give also movement alerts based on the type of measurements we have. And our solution, our solution has major benefits, where we are collecting all the data from the sites, so we can go for also providing rainfall alerts the way you should be getting in from weather.com. And because we are doing machine learning, we can also do predictive analysis. I'll just show you probably to the end of this particular slide. Apart from that, we also give you movement alerts. So if there is any movement happening in this particular area, then we can raise an alert about the chance of happening of a movement much ahead of time. And then all our units are cloud monitored or cloud integrated, where all of you also can look into the site and try to get the values corresponding to the particular location. And of course, we are doing a lot of weather parameters, so we can also give you weather alerts, whether there is a chance of a high rainfall, low rainfall, or what type of weather you can expect because of the data which we are getting directly in the site. So based on these particular locations, which we have, as I told you, which we have been doing from 2018, with the interest of district administration here, we have started collecting the data of the soil displacement over 2 months when it rains, and from different from almost 5 stations. So in the earlier I have talked about training and testing. The same again, we try to do the same training and testing. We split the data into 80%, 20%. Now I'm talking about a machine learning, which I'm trying to do for predicting the soil displacement over the particular location. So in this, we try to use univariate and multivariate ensemble methods and a neural network which can be used to predict the movement one time step ahead in each of this location wherever we are trying to get the data from. And these particular predictions can be done on time to time scale depending on the range of the movements we have. So I'm just trying to show you a small data line. So you can see very clearly two lines which are going, which are falling line to line apart each other. Then we have a displacement profile and we have a prediction of a displacement profile. So you can see the blue and the red line are going very closer to each other with a very small range of RMSE falling to about 1.5% to 5%. When I'm training, then the person, of course, when I train, the errors are going to be less, whereas the testing gives the best line of understanding whether how much is the data or how much is the error. Now it is almost like 5.5. This is the prediction which we did somewhere in 2018, whereas we kept on collecting a lot of information, lot of data from the site for all of this particular time, and we could get down on the errors. Now we are very much in control. Our training, forget about training, our testing is now giving us an error to almost like 2 to 2.5%, and we have now gone into a scale of 1 week predictions depending on, again, different types of ensemble models which we try to use in machine learning. So this is what we are doing, and normally a sudden movement on this particular location is an indication of a chance of happening of a slide. Okay, so the dates are very well matched. If you can look, sorry, this is somewhere, this is not the point. So yeah, initially we, again, you can see compared to earlier, now if you look into, then the blue line and the red line are now falling very closer to each other, and the errors are, of course, RMSEs are again falling lesser to 6% in this particular scale. So depending on which we are now trying to give different alerts from different locations based on the happening of a movement. Now currently we are in the scale of movement. We cannot say that these particular movements can add up to have a landslide. However, if we are able to predict a good, if we are able to predict a happening of a movement, then the scale of prediction of the same to be converted as a landslide is also possible. But of course, we need a lot of data sets and we need a lot of time to understand such a thing happening. However, in the initial phase in 2018, when I was saying that we started monitoring that particular location where the houses have been were susceptible for a slide which was happening just beside their vicinity. So we could keep our sensors and we have monitored, and on this particular day of 27th of July 2018, our sensors have started giving us information on the possible happening of a slide. We started our monitoring somewhere here, so that is why the data peaks on. But however, after a particular time, almost near to 1 month, we go on for understanding the for understanding the happening of a movement in this particular location. So these particular movements which we alerted, and the traffic has been stopped, and it was told that in the late night, somewhere around 2 o'clock in the morning, there were huge slide which again happened in the same location in 2018, and this averted a major disaster because of our sensors, and this is the same has been confirmed by our district administration from IIT Mandi.
Sensors.
Okay, I don't want to really play this video, but just to give you an idea about this person, he is our DC, district commissionerate, deputy commissioner of our district Mandi, who has confirmed that our particular sensors have given them early warning and they could avert a major disaster happening in place. Let me not show you the video. And after the major declaration by the district administration, we were covered in a lot of news, including BBC channel. And now currently, with the system getting more and more focus, more and more more and more success. We are now approached by various organizations, including Indian Railways. We have recently deployed our monitoring sensors, not only for landslides, but also we have started looking into structural monitoring also, mostly in the retaining walls, which are developing cracks because of the impending moisture or increasing moisture in the behind these particular walls, which were not constructed probably. As you can see, there are not many or not good amount of rain of VP holes, which can cause a particular this retaining walls to fail, especially in terms of the tension and the cracks which are getting in this particular location. So we have started looking into various aspects, not only on the soil but also on the line of structural, not exactly structural monitoring, but yes, we are monitoring retaining walls of their particular location. And now we are in talks with Indian Railways again to go for some pilot scale testing in Goa, where is Padi Tunnel. I'm sure if you have traveled into this particular area of Konkan Railways, you are going through a lot of hills, and all these particular hills are landslide prone, and there are a lot of issues associated which are given by KRCL, Konkan Railway Corporation Limited. So we are in talks with them if we can go for pilot scale and give them our challenge to accept the challenge on going for monitoring of the slides. And apart from this, because we are also active on publishing in international journals, especially IEEE, we have been again contacted by TfL, that is Transportation for London Underground Metro, where they want to go for a particular slide which is dominant over the time. So we started talking in the start of 2020. However, because of the ongoing COVID situation, we are unable to make it to go for a visit and try to understand their requirement. However, mostly by the end of this year, we are hopeful that we are going to go at least for one deployment location in this particular area in London. So this particular technology, which started from IIT Mandi, has now gone into commercial scale because of the awards and because of a lot of focus which have been taken because of the representation which was done by the district of Mandi as well as the state of Himachal Pradesh. And now we are also having a lot of patents and publications. I think I forgot to upgrade this particular slide. We have now 5 patents and we have more than 10 publications in this particular area, especially in the major journals like IEEE in this. And of course, as understood, this particular work is impossible to be done by any single line engineer or a civil engineer. It includes a part of research which is done by Varun Dutt from computer science. I myself from School of Engineering in Geotechnical Engineering, and my scholars from Geotechnical Engineering, Computer Science and Electrical have been major importance for us to go for this particular setup and developing this technology, including the machine learning part, both for identifying the hazard as well as in predicting the movements which are happening in the soil for impending slides. So again, I thank all of you for your patient listening, and I open the session for any discussion or any questions particular to this presentation. And maybe I can come out of the presentation mode so that I can quickly take on any questions from your end.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your excellent informative presentation. Sir,
thank you. Yes, please.
Few questions from
Sure.
participants. The first question is from Preeti Mishra, where she is asking, how do we decide the magnitude of weight, that is 1, 2 or 3 for a particular parameter?
Sorry, how to take in?
Preeti, how do we decide the magnitude of
weightage of the
that
parameters?
is 1, 2 or for a particular parameter, that is.
So this you are talking about this, right? Is the slide visible?
Yes, sir, yes.
Oh, thank you. So sorry, Preeti, probably there was some misunderstanding. I'm not saying that the rating is 1. The rating comes out as a parameter when you do this particular correlation coefficient method. Okay, so there is a particular method. If you can follow, you can go into literature. You can search into this correlation coefficient method. There are different coefficient methods. It can be Pearson coefficient. It can be correlation coefficient. It can be regression coefficient. It can be different values. Now you have to look into which particular parameter can be of use to you, and this particular factor is going to give you the weightage of the parameter corresponding to each of it. And depending on the weightage, we have gone for ranking of the parameters. Okay, so the 1, 2, 3, 4 we have given as ranking based on the weightages which we have got from the correlation coefficient. If it can answer, if it has answered your query.
Okay, okay. Sir, one question with respect to hazard indicator. In your initial slides you had shown.
Okay.
In that there were 4 scales, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just I wanted to know, sir, that how this means is how the minimum or maximum value of this scale you are fixing, means on which basis you are fixing this scale.
Okay. So again, good question. I could not cover this quickly. Thank you again for the question. So now typically I'm sure if you have done any course on rock related aspects or rock related things, then we have a parameter which we, sorry, just a minute. So I'm sure we know a parameter which is called RMR, rock mass ratio, if you have ever calculated. So we have typically taken the same, or you can use the same concept which have been used here. Okay, so these particular values are, for example, when I talk about the height of the slope. Okay, so you can understand the height is a major parameter. If you look into any of the formula or any of the especially for landslides, the soil parameters C and phi, slope parameter alpha. Okay, and the next important parameter is H. If you remember our PAPP calculations, the pressure, if you have a cut slope, if you have a cut area, then the pressure you are going to go something like this. Okay, we are very much used to, we use all this particular formula, half Ka gamma H square, Ka gamma H square. Okay, so you can see in Ka you have all the parameters of phi. Okay, plus of course this is for slopes where you have formulas also for as a function of cohesion. If you have cohesion in the soils, K C C into Ka. Okay, so this particular formula will give us an idea about the pressure which is given by on a unsupported slope or a cut slope, where you're going to have all these parameters as your importance. So you can see H square, height is one of the major parameter. Okay, soil also have parameters, association parameters. So all these parameters are the indicators. So height is one of the indicators. So you can see if the height is high, then the chance of a slide happening is going to be comparatively again high. You look into again the concepts which are given by Janbu or Bishop, then you will get even more idea about this particular slope. Though I used a different formula or a different context here in the example which I showed. But yes, if the height is very high, okay, I'm going to have higher score for this. Similarly, if the height is very small, then this is going to be small. Again, I am sure the answer for your question directly is most of this information is done over time with the information which is acquired from different areas as well as physics, also including some information from data sets or maybe some heuristic approach which we call it otherwise, mostly from the field associated data.
So it means that the earlier landslides which have taken place in past means any parameter, particularly because most of the landslides are with respect to the unexpected rainfall only.
Right.
Okay, and another thing, when we say there is an unexpected rainfall, means there is a drastic change in the internal porous pressures that has been taking place in the soil, and second is the hydraulic gradient, change in the hydraulic gradient which has taken place because of the internal porosities in the soil mass. So means you mean to say that all these factors which are the part of the soil properties, or you can say the part of the geotech engineering,
yes,
have been clamped means into one single parameter or a one single coefficient?
No, not exactly. As I told again, most of these particular parameters are coming as a part of our understanding from the sites.
Okay.
Okay, so whereas if you look into all these particular parameters, for example, when you say Janbu method, okay, so for example, if I have a site in Norway and I have a site in Himachal and I have a site in say Bombay or maybe any of this particular location in the Western Ghats. Okay, so if I take the same parameter, so for example, if I can have more or less same soil parameters everywhere. Okay, but however, if you look into the method or physical method, then there is going to be a slight difference in the way you apply these numbers into the formula to get your factor of safety equations, right? But however,
same, sorry to interrupt, but the same thing can be achieved even if I go for back analysis approach also.
see, understand, you are doing back analysis once there is a failure.
No, means for any existing slope also I can do it.
No, for existing slope, if you want to go for back analysis, then the parameters which you are going to take are going to be really, I don't know, I mean, the sensitivity or the reliability of the parameters are going to play a huge.
In that case, that is true that in back analysis approach, whatever present soil properties that I'm assuming or that I'm taking, that can be, means in that case also I can do some sort of statistical analysis by changing those properties with respect to the worst conditions of poor water pressures or worst conditions of seismic effects or something like that.
Yes, that is possible. I mean, these parameters are just an indicator, as I told you. Okay, this case which happened. Okay, so I mean, they did not consider probably few of the parameters, but yes, in our particular condition or in your location, you can go for your own set of parameters which you think are more indicators of hazard. It need not be that you are following the same parameters which I listed in this particular presentation.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So there is, sorry, I just want to add something.
Yes,
so
yes,
just look
please.
into some information which is published by Professor Surya Prakash. If I'm not exactly wrong, he is Professor Surya Prakash and he comes from NIDM,
okay.
National Institute of Disaster Management. Okay, so he has some publications. I am not very sure about. I think he has a book also on this particular aspect of landslide risk in India. Then probably in that particular book you can find he has done some good collection of information from various areas. I think from this particular book you can get an idea about what type of hazard indicators we can use in our context or in Indian context of landslides.
Yeah. Actually, in 2003 when I was at for my dissertation work, I was at CRRI.
Okay. Oh, okay.
At that time, there was Professor R.K. Bhandari.
Yes, Professor Bhandari, father of Indian landslides.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to interact with him a little bit.
Very good.
And at that time, we had also an opportunity to hear some of his presentations.
Of course.
So at that time also, we were discussing about this approach. Right. That why this means back analysis approach is not being utilized to this for landslide predictions.
Yes. I think there is a good amount of work which is done by GSI in these particular lines.
Yeah.
So it depends. Again, as I told, you can set your own lines of how you can actually you want to go in this particular area. So that's open. Otherwise, it's all these parts are still open.
Okay. Sir, another question.
Yes.
In your instrumentation part, where you had used some sophisticated instruments to monitor the displacements and other things.
Okay.
And that you have measured with respect to time also.
Right.
Okay. So I just wanted to know that when any similar, I will not use the word similar, but any predictive model you have prepared from such measurements.
Yeah, I mean all these particular models which I showed you in the end, towards the end.
Yeah.
All these were done only from our data.
Okay. But if the properties are nearly similar, or if the conditions are similar, then this predictive model can work.
No, see, for example, this particular model is coming out only from the data which we are collecting from the site. Okay, and these predictions which we are making is not including any of the soil parameter directly.
Okay.
Okay, so these parameters are directly, these are simple statistic or data models of machine learning. Okay, we are not using any probabilistic models or any of the theoretical models which we use in soil.
Okay.
Okay, so we are doing a data-based analysis. It is not what should I say, a FEM analysis or a predictive analysis or a Plaxis or FLAC or something like that. We don't use any of that combination. We only use data as a input for our particular model.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now we are developing models of how we can convert this data or how this data indicates the deformation in the soil that is currently in process otherwise.
Okay. So trying to correlate with the.
Yeah, we are also trying to see, for example, at all these data where it is happening, I also have soil moisture content. Okay, so now I want to see at that particular moisture, this soil has given so much of displacement. So whether this displacement is continuous, that whenever I get a moisture, I'm getting the same displacement, or is this displacement controlled by various other parameters in the soil, that we are trying to do as a different understanding from this data.
Okay.
So current model, whatever I'm showing is only based on machine learning. There is no major part of or major role of directly geotechnical engineering or geotechnical parameters which we are trying to use in this particular model.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So any other questions,
Any
please?
other questions from participants? Okay. Okay. There are no questions. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much
If you
for your
okay, thank you.
excellent presentation
So,
and